Singles pickleball is way more physically demanding than doubles. So if you want to be able to win, you need to know all the techniques and strategies that I'm about to go through. As someone who's played singles pickleball at the pro level, I can safely say that all the tips I'm about to give you will work at any level. So even if you're a doubles player that's just curious about trying singles, all these tips will work for you. Let's get into it. One thing to keep in mind is that the most important part of winning in pickleball singles is having good passing shots, which I'm going to go through, but first we need to cover the serve and the return. The serves and returns in pickleball singles are a lot more important because you can really do a lot more damage in the first two shots. So if you hit a really good serve or a really good return, there's a way higher likelihood that you'll win the point. In this video, we're gonna focus more on how to serve good and return good for singles though. So we're not gonna go too deep into like the technique of serves and returns themselves. If you wanna go deep into that, we have a full video on that, so go check it out. If not though, let's talk about how to serve for pickleball singles. So why serving in pickleball singles is so important is because if I serve well, I set myself up very well to hit a good third shot, which I can actually use like I just did there to win the point immediately. In doubles, you kind of have to set things up more, and you're usually gonna have to hit more than just your third shot to win the point. But what makes a serve effective in pickleball singles? Well, just like in doubles, the number one thing is hitting it nice and deep. So if I can get my serve nice and deep towards the back portion of the box, it makes it a lot harder for my opponent to run forward and get to the kitchen after their return, which if they're returning, they should be trying to run forward and get to the kitchen. So if I hit a nice deep serve, he has to stay back, and that gives me more of an opening, which there I could have taken advantage of that and hit a passing shot. So getting your serve deep in pickleball singles is a necessity in terms of playing effective. So if I'm hitting it super deep and it's slow, that still leaves my opponent to hit a pretty good return, right? You can hit a pretty hard, fast return if I'm hitting a slow return, even if it's deep. So what I want to do is get good power and spin so that he doesn't have much of an opportunity to attack me on his return. If he can attack me with his return, it's gonna be really hard for me to win the point. So with the serve in pickleball singles, you wanna do whatever you can to make things challenging for them. And the way you do that is with depth, power, and spin. As a bonus tip, what you can also do, and this doesn't really work as well in pickleball doubles, but you can also try to get your opponent off the court, out to the side more, because that leaves a huge gap for you on your next shot. So if I hit my serve, we're on the left side right now, if I hit my serve more towards the side like this, on my third shot, all of a sudden I have a way bigger gap, you see. So you can still go down the middle or more towards your opponent too, but if I serve down the middle, he's already sort of in the middle of the court and can cover either side a little bit better. So sometimes going out to the side can be an effective way to make your serve a little bit better. If your opponents are super fast, it might not make much of a difference, but if your opponents aren't super fast, it can actually be huge in terms of setting yourself up for a good third shot. When it comes to returning in singles, just like on your serve, it's a lot more important to hit an effective return than in doubles. And the first thing that you want to think about is giving yourself a little bit of space. So because your opponent's probably going to be trying to serve harder, you want to make sure you have enough space to move forward through the ball and give yourself time after it bounces to hit an effective return. So see an example of that. Drew's hitting a pretty deep return there, but because I started back, I give myself a little bit of extra space, which lets me hit a good return as I'm moving in. So next thing to focus on is you definitely want to try to hit your return and move in. So sometimes you'll see pro women or certain players hit their return and stay back, but I think it's 100% ideal in pickleball singles to try your best to hit your return and move into the kitchen immediately, just like you would do in doubles. Because what that does is it just lets you take over the net. When you're the first player in, you have a big advantage. So here's an example of what that looks like in a real point. Hit my return, I move straight into the kitchen, where I tried to hit my fourth shot as a volley like I did there. If I don't move on my return, I essentially give my opponent the advantage in the point, which they shouldn't have as the serving player. So that looks like this. I stay back, and Drew's actually the first player to come in, and he can, a winner on that shot because my return's actually not doing much damage. So the first two shots in a pickleball singles point should generally look like this. Drew hits the serve, I take my return and immediately move forward to where he tries to go for a passing shot or do something like he just did there. In terms of where you aim the return, this is super important. So nothing I say is 100% true against every player, but a lot of the time, returning cross court in pickleball singles can give you a pretty big disadvantage, and I'll show you why. So when Drew serves me here and I hit a cross court return, I give him a little bit of an advantage with his passing shot because it makes it a lot easier for him to hit that down the line passing shot, which, as I'll tell you later, is one of the most effective ones to go for. So in general, going down the line or down the middle makes things a little bit easier for you as the returner in terms of making it slightly more challenging for your opponent to hit a good passing shot. So if I'm going down the line, it doesn't have as much of an angle, and it's a little bit easier for me to cover that cross-court pass, which I'll also talk about later. The exception to this rule is if your opponent is way weaker on one side. So usually if you're playing someone, a lot of the time their backhand pass or their backhand third shot is not nearly as good. So in that case, it's probably more worth it to go cross-court in this situation, just so you force them to hit a backhand. But what happens after the serve and return? If you're the serving player, you're probably gonna try to hit a passing shot. And if you're the returner, you're probably gonna be at the net, the kitchen line, defending these passing shots. For reference, a passing shot is when you're hitting a shot from the back and your opponent's up and you're trying to hit it past them. So it would look something like this, where he's at the net volleying and I'm trying to hit my ground strokes right by him. So this is a term stolen from tennis where passing shots are also super common. So let's talk about how to hit good passing shots. Before I get into that though, make sure to subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. Every week, I try to make the best video that I possibly can to try to help you improve. So make sure to click the subscribe button below this video and you'll get suggested everything that we make. When it comes to passing shots, there's 4 main types that I see players using. The first, and probably most common, is a hard down the line pass. So when I say down the line, that means that you're hitting the ball straight ahead, parallel with the sideline. So a down the line passing shot looks like this. I'm just hitting the ball straight down that line. The next passing shot we're gonna talk about is the angle. So the angle is where I go cross court. So cross court's the opposite of down the line, where I'm going at an angle. But the angle passing shot, I don't hit it really hard. I use more spin and finesse to make it land closer to the kitchen. So the angle pass looks something like this. I'm trying to get the ball to land a little bit in front of Drew. I'll show you that one again. Trying to make the ball land a little bit in front of Drew so that he can't reach it. So an angle looks something like that. And you see I can make him stretch a lot with that one. The next type we're gonna cover is the hard cross-court pass. So I can do the angle where I'm hitting it softer and getting into the kitchen more. And I can also go for the hard cross-court pass where I'm just hitting it like the down the line one, but going cross-court. So that one wasn't very good, he got it. But I can hit my cross-court pass hard to where he can't get it like that. And the last type of pass we're gonna cover, probably the most difficult to use and least common, is a double style drop where I hit a normal drop and I move forward to play up here. So your opponent will probably get that one back, but it can be very effective if you know how to use that pass properly. So all these passes that I just went over can be done on both the forehand side and they can also be done on the backhand side using what's called an inside out forehand. So if I'm over here, I can use a backhand, of course. But if you prefer your forehand, you can also do what's called running around your forehand and hit these same shots from this side with a forehand. So I can still go up the line and go for angles cross court with my forehand over here too. If you already play singles, make sure to let me know in the comments which one of those passing shots is your favorite. I'm curious to know. For me though, I listed it in order of which I like best. So my favorite's the down the line and then the angle and so on. If you agree with me, make sure to like this video. If not though, let me know in the comments which are your favorite. Now though, let's go through all of them. Starting off with the hard down the line drive. I think this might be the best passing shot because for a lot of players, it's the easiest one to make in, especially if you're at a lower level. So it's easy to be consistent with the down the line hard drive. In terms of what you want to focus on, the main thing is keeping the ball low and using topspin. So a lot of the time your opponents are going to get this shot back. So if they do, you want to make sure that you have the ball low so they can't do too much with it and you can try to get their next ball back too. So keeping the ball low and using that topspin is going to be big in terms of making this shot effective. The next thing is the better your opponent is at covering the court, the closer you're gonna need to aim this shot to the line. So Drew is a very good mover. So if I'm playing him, I'm gonna wanna hit this pass probably within 2 feet of that line or else he's gonna get it back. If I'm hitting the pass, more towards the middle, he's just gonna hit a winner on the volley. So it's important to keep in mind that the person that's at the net or at the kitchen line has a big advantage. So you really need to make these passes good in order to be effective. If you see a big gap though, this is one of the best passing shots to hit. So if Drew is really off to the side of the court, I can use that down line pass, and it's a super effective way for me to finish off the point fast. And it works just as well on the backhand side too. So you do the exact same thing with your backhand. I have a two-handed backhand, but if you have a one-hander or you want to use your inside this would be called an inside-in forehand, but if you want to use the forehand on this side, this is a very versatile pass that works all around the court. And one bonus tip that I like to do with this pass, but it also works for the other passes too, is if your opponent hits a return that's not very deep, what you can do is take it a little bit earlier. And what that does is it takes their time away, so they don't have as much time to get in and in position, so you have more court to work with. So if Drew hits a shorter return, I can move forward and essentially take that ball earlier to where he didn't have much time to get, over to this side of the court. So you can take advantage of the fact that he didn't return it deep. The next pass I want to go over though is the short angle. So that looks like this. Your opponents come in and you use a little dipper angle to get the ball by them. The one thing I'll say about this one is that it's definitely the hardest to get the hang of. If you don't have good touch and you can't hit a third shot drop in doubles, you might not be able to hit this one consistently, but you should still learn it either way. And so all you're trying to do with this passing shot is hit a slower, so it's not full power, hit a slower angle that lands probably closer to the corner of the kitchen. So like right here. So that's like the perfect spot. So somewhere in this range. If I hit it and it's gonna land here, my opponent actually might be able to get it back. So it's really a defined range right there in the corner of that kitchen. And to show you what that looks like from the back, again, I'm gonna try to go for topspin, and I wanna get it right where I just showed you. So see there, he can still get it, but if I get that nice angle, it makes it a little bit harder for him. And just like on the down the line, depending on how good your opponent is at covering the court, you're gonna have to go for more in terms of making it effective. So if they're really fast, you might really need to get it here. But if they're not that fast, you can maybe play it a little safer and hit it in this area and still get the same result. And you can do this on the backhand side too, which looks like this. Just going for that little short angle, and see if I can make that, it's gonna be tough for any player to get it back. So very effective pass. Like I said though, it's a little bit hard to get the hang of. The feel, it's a very accuracy-based shot, so you need to make sure that you practice it if you want to get the hang of it. To show you one more example on the forehand, this looks just like this. So I have this shot, going for that short angle. That wasn't a great one, but still got the job done. Next passing shot we're gonna go over though is the hard cross court, which looks like this. So essentially the same idea as the hard down the line, except I'm going at that cross court angle. And this passing shot can be very effective, but the reason why I think it's slightly less effective than the down the line is when I draw a line cross court, my opponent doesn't necessarily have to go quite as far as if I was to draw a line down the line. Because if they're sitting in the middle, the line is the farthest place away from them. And if you're hitting a cross court drive, you can't necessarily get it to go on that line, right? You can make it land on the line, but the path there might cross by your opponent. So it could make it a little bit easier for your opponent to hit the ball. That said though, if you have an open gap, the shot's really effective. So if you see that there's an open gap and you have that cross court opening, it can work very well. So just like on the down the line one, I think this is a more opportunistic shot where if you see the opening and you need to hit it cross court, you go for it. If your opponent's already up though, standing in the middle of the kitchen like this, I'd probably avoid the cross court drive because they might be able to reach it just by lunging in either direction. In terms of where to aim this shot, I like to go off the side of the court more. So if you're going off the back of the court, there's a very good chance that your opponents are gonna be able to get it back. But if the ball's going off the side of the court on either side, so on this side, it would look like this, that's gonna make it pretty challenging for your opponent to get the shot back. And the last style pass is pretty much a double style drop. So all I'm doing here is using a drop that I used to come forward on, which I can hopefully open up the court with like that. I'm not gonna go too much into the technique of a normal drop here, but if you wanna look at that, we have a full video on it. If you're gonna go for that double style drop though, the one thing to think about is that you wanna get it out to the sides of the court, probably ideally to your opponent's backhand. After you hit any of these passing shots, if you do it well, your goal should be to try and move forward, where you'll either get an easy shot that you can kill, or get into what's called cat and mouse, where you get into a dink battle like this with your opponent, where somebody comes on top like that. Before I get into that though, let's talk about what you do when you're defending passing shots. So when you're the returning player, your first goal, like I said, is to get into the kitchen. So you don't want to stay back if you don't need to. And when you get here, you want to take a big split step. So the footwork of the return is super important so that you're set up. So all you're gonna do is hit that return, run in, and take a big split step like I did there. This sets you up to explode in either direction to react to their passing shot. And when you're up here, it's a little weird because you're technically on offense because your opponent's back and you're up, but you're kind of out in defense because you don't know what they're gonna do. So you're sort of at the mercy of what kind of passing shot they're gonna hit. So you need to be really set up to defend their passing shots with lunging steps like this. So that's super important to being effective when you're returning. And depending on what type of passing shot your opponent chooses to hit, you're going to react like this. So that one, he went right to me, but if he goes farther away, I might really need to stretch like I did there, and it can sort of turn into a little bit of a dogfight. So it's a very physical position to be in, even though you're up and your opponent's back. And all you're really trying to do with these volleys is take them to the open court. So a lot of the time, your opponent might be off to the side, and if he hits that pass right here to my backhand, all I'm trying to do is get it to the open court, and a lot of the time you can just win the point with a shot like that. So it can be hard though to make that happen because you might be off balance, or they might have hit the shot really hard, but you're really just trying to hit the ball to the open court. That's goal number one. And goal number two is to keep them back. So if he hits a really good passing shot, the last thing I want to do is pop the ball up so that he can run forward and kill it like this. So the way that I prevent that from happening is by hitting my volleys nice and low. So even if he hits a good passing shot like I just showed you there, if I keep my volley nice and low, he can't really do much, and he kind of is forced to stay back because he can't intercept those balls out of the air. So you want to keep your volleys nice and low and to the open court. So when you're up here, to show you again, you're essentially just moving around in this position, lunging for these passes. So a lot of the time you're gonna have to take these big lunging steps, and ideally you're square to the court, so I'm shuffling like this. Sometimes though, on your backhand, you might have to do one of these, but you always want to try to get back to the middle. So a very physical position to be in, side to side, so a lot of movement. Back to when you're hitting passing shots though, the three things that can really happen after are you get that easy shot that you can put away, you get on defense where you're out of position, or you go somewhere in between to what we call cat and mouse, where we get into these sort of dinking rallies like this. So if you get into cat and mouse, there's a few things that you need to know. The first is that all you're really trying to do in this situation is look for a little bit higher ball that you can take hard to the open court. So if I hit a little angle dink to Drew like this, and I see I have the opening, I'm gonna take that down the line immediately. So you don't wanna stay in this type of rally for too long. The next thing you wanna know is that angles in these types of rallies are your best friend. So a lot of the time, you can just hit a really sharp angle like this that your opponent can't get back, or that opens up the court. So if you can go for an angle in a cat and mouse type of rally, you should. The last thing that you should know is that you should always be trying to move forward. So ideally, I wanna try to get to a volley situation as quickly as I can. I don't wanna be getting pushed back because the farther back I am in that rally, the more I'm giving my opponent the advantage. Now guys, though, we're gonna go through some full court examples of real points. Me and Drew are gonna go as hard as we possibly can, so hopefully this is entertaining to you. But we're gonna go through some full court examples where I sort of show you in real time what all these skills that we just went through look like. So you see there, I went for a hard cross-court pass, and it got Drew to pop up that shot, which let me get to that aggressive position where I could hit to the open court and win the point. There I went for my short angle pass, which got me into a cat and mouse situation. One thing to keep in mind is that when you go for the softer passes, you're more likely to get into the cat and mouse situation. And in that cat and mouse situation, I got the upper hand, went to the open court. There, I did a good job with my volleys in terms of defending. Drew hit a pretty tough volley to me there, but I lunged, got it back, and made him play. So a lot of the time your opponents are gonna hit really hard passes. Your goal in that situation is just to make them play. So even if you're not gonna hit the greatest volley ever, by making them hit one more ball, if they're back and you're up, you're still in an advantage. So just always try to make them hit one more ball. There, I didn't hit the best return, which gave Drew the opportunity to hit a winner on his pass, which is totally fine. If you're playing pickleball singles, a lot of the time your opponent's just gonna hit a winner on their pass. What's important is that you show up for the next point and you keep trying your best to get their passes back. If you get discouraged because your opponent hits a few good passes, it's gonna be a lot easier for them to keep scoring. So you wanna try your best to get them off their serve so you can start serving and try to score. So there, I got Drew on pretty crazy defense, but because he kept getting the ball back, I didn't do the best job of ending the point. He actually was able to still win. So if you ever get on crazy defense, just keep trying to make your opponent hit one more ball. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes you'll actually be able to win the point still. So you may need to do a lot of running, but a lot of the time it'll pay off. If you have a singles partner that you like to play with, make sure to send them this video so that they can improve too. If you want to go into the technique of the drop though, like I mentioned earlier, watch this.